In the last lecture, we looked a little bit at like ecosystem and biomes. We looked at different biotic and abiotic factors. We really focused on those abiotics. Well, now we're going to get more into some of the biotic factors, looking at the community level. So let's remind ourselves how zoomed in or out is a community. A community, so it goes organism, population, community. So community is all the species living close enough together to interact with each other. And there's going to be lots of interactions in between these individuals, okay? Here's some examples. We're actually going to walk through like a whole bunch of examples, so don't worry about writing these down yet. We're going to use a positive indicating a positive effect on a species and a negative indicating a negative effect on a species, okay? So interspecific competition is negative, okay? So we have competition between individuals of different species, and this is negative to both. The growth and survival of both species is negatively affected. So basically what this means is if you've got two species that are competing for the same resources, they can't coexist permanently in the same place. At some point, one species is going to use the resources better than the other, and it's going to mean that they survive better, they reproduce more. And so eventually, if this continues to happen, then the other species is not going to survive, and it's going to have to either leave or just they're all going to die, okay? Before I move on, one thing I want to mention is, you ever heard this word niche? Niche just means, hey, how does a species use the biotic and abiotic resources in its environment? Okay, so here is a case of different species of warblers, and they all live in the same tree. And this is interspecies competition because they're all competing in this one tree. What kind of speciation would this be? Remember from last unit? It's going to be sympatric because they all live in the same area. They could totally possibly mate and reproduce. They're all right there, but they don't for some reason. Like this guy likes to live in this part of the tree and this guy likes to live in this part of the tree, and then they've got some overlap and it's just a hot mess. Okay. Another type of interaction is predation. This is going to be positive for the predator and negative for the prey, obviously. Lots of adaptations for both the predator and the prey, right? Predator, claws, teeth, fangs, stinger. Prey, we've got things like, skunks where they can spray things, porcupines, we've got their quills, we've got camouflage. We've got here a posematic coloration. That's basically warning coloration with poison dart frogs, which says, hey, I'm poisonous, don't eat me. So that hopefully a predator knows, I'm going to stay away from that, right? Very helpful. This down here is one of my favorites. So this is a green parrot snake, and they like to eat the larva of a hawk moth, meaning the thing that's going to turn into a moth, right? The little caterpillar worm thing. The larva is the babies. Here's the larva. But what does the larva look like? They look like snakes. They hiss, they move like snakes, but definitely not actually a snake. And so when this guy sees these guys hissing and moving around, he's like, I don't want to eat those. And he turns and walks away. Pretty cool, right? Well, not walks, he's a snake, but you know what I'm saying. Herbivory, that's going to be positive for the herbivore, negative for the plant because the plant's getting eaten. Plants can have spines or thorns or maybe toxic leaves to try to keep themselves from being eaten. Parasitism. This is obviously going to be positive for the parasite, negative for the host because the parasite is literally feeding off the host to survive. No bueno if you're the host. Mutualism. This is going to be positive for both. Both species benefit. So one here is lichen. This is this like weird leafy stuff, but actually there is which is a fungus, and then there's blue-green algae that lives on it. So the fungus can get some nutrients from the algae, and the algae gets a place to live on the fungus. So good for both. Commensalism. This is where one species benefits and the other species is neither harmed nor helped. So like a bird's nest in a tree. Obviously this helps the bird have like a place to put its nest, but this doesn't hurt the tree. It also doesn't help the tree. Just kind of meh. There's facilitation, and that is oftentimes can have a positive or a zero positive, which is kind of the same as commensalism really, which is a positive zero, right? So basically here's an example. So Palo Verde bushes are quote unquote nursery plants for saguaro cacti. So these cacti need the shade to, the babies need the shade to survive. And then obviously this cactus is probably providing some thorny protection against some little herbivores for this plant, right? Okay, so that's some biotic relationships. Let's kind of start to take a look at some other things. obviously things going to be eating other things, and we can represent this a couple different ways. One way is through a trophic structure, okay, and this is looking at, so the bottom level is the producer, these are going to be plants, and then next above that are going to be the things that eats the plants, and next are the secondary consumers, the things that eat the things that eat the plants. Then we have tertiary consumers, the things that eat the things that eat the things that eat the plants. You got what I'm saying? Quaternary consumers, these are the top dogs, and then we've got decomposers. Okay, we can also draw things as a food chain as well to show the energy transfer between these different organisms. So we often like to draw things as a chain or a web because it's usually not linear, right? It's usually, you know, um, deer is munching on leaves of a tree, but also so is a squirrel, right? And a hawk is going to eat a squirrel and is going to eat a bunny rabbit, but this bunny rabbit's eating, grass. So there's complicated. There's lots of things feeding off of lots of other things. Some species end up having a bigger impact than others. Okay, one is called the dominant species. This means they're the most abundant, or they have the highest biomass. So in northeastern America, this is the sugar maple, this type of tree. They're everywhere. Okay, so it ends up being very, very influential in this environment, and it's going to determine how abundant other species are. One is called the keystone species. These are not necessarily abundant, but they're going to have a huge effect on the community. And I'm actually going to now stop and I'm going to show you this video because it is so interesting about wolves in Yellowstone. Okay, I'm not going to be able to show you this video, but I will send you the link to the video and you should watch it because it's so, so, so interesting about what happens when wolves are like removed from an ecosystem and the big effect it has. So I'll send you the link. What happens now when our community gets disrupted, which is the ecosystem way of saying disturbed? We could have logging, we could have urbanization, we could have deforestation, there could be pollution. These are all human disturbances, or we could have things like floods, wildfire, tornadoes, hurricanes. These are more typically natural occurrences. Okay. So what happens when that happens? Well, obviously, after a disturbance, there's going to be a lot of the plants and animals are wiped out. But what's going to happen is called succession. So that disturbed area, all of a sudden, things are going to start coming back. First, some certain species will come, next other things, next other things. So the primary succession is when, hey, here's what's coming back in when the soils are not yet formed. And then secondary succession is, okay, here are the things that move in once we do have soils. So if here's a forest fire, basically a couple years out, we start seeing some annual plants. These are plants that come and go, but every winter they die. And then next we get some grasses to move in. We get some perennials, things that don't die during the winter. Then next we get some pines and oak trees and hickory. And then we get some bigger. So you see how that kind of slowly starts building back up again. That's succession, the order in which things rebuild after a disturbance. Okay. So here's where we are in the textbook. Hopefully your main take homes would be all those different interactions, like dominant species, keystone species. Please go back and watch that wolf video that I'll send you, and the main idea behind disturbances.